Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the TRACKWISE Designs PLC interim results for the 6 months ended 30th of June 2020. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Philip Johnson, CEO, and Mark Hodgkins, CFO of TRACKWISE Designs PLC. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so Philip here and Mark, and we're here to present to you the first half results of 2020 from TRACKWISE. So brief agenda, which I think is probably straightforward. So straight on, who are TRACKWISE? So TRACKWISE is a UK-based manufacturer of products using printed circuit technology. The company was founded in 1989, was headquartered in Tewkesbury, Gloucestershire. We came to the market in July 2018. Since the acquisition of Stevenage Circuits Limited in April of this year, we now employ a little over 100 people, broadly split 50-50 over the two manufacturing sites. As we transfer our RF production from Tewkesbury to Stevenage, Tewkesbury is becoming focused on the manufacture of improved harness technology, our proprietary means of manufacturing length unlimited flexible printed circuits. Stevenage, now incorporating RF production, manufactures a full range of advanced PCBs listed here, and the two divisions of the business are now to be labelled as improved harness technology, or IHT, and advanced PCBs. Across the integrated business, we deliver a wide range of products to a wide range of customers in a wide range of markets, both domestic and export, and we'll expand upon this later in the slide. So the highlights of the period under review, which is the 6 months to June of this year. The acquisition of Stevenage Circuits was a major event in the period. Stevenage Circuits has broadened the base upon which the growth of the company is to be built. It strengthens cash generation, provides significant additional quantum of technical capability, provides additional customers, and most importantly, provides additional manufacturing capacity, allowing Tewkesbury to focus upon IHT production. And I would like to publicly acknowledge that Mark did an excellent job with this acquisition. We bought a good company at a keen price, and we'll further discuss the impact in due course. Again, through this presentation, I will describe in detail the progress with IHT across our key target sectors. But in summary, we've made good, if somewhat COVID-impacted, progress across the board in EV, in medical, in aerospace. In the period, we announced our first production order for IHT parts for electric vehicle battery modules, and I hope and expect you will have seen our post-period announcement of a signed supply agreement for IHT parts for both electric vehicle battery modules and battery packs. This is a great milestone for the company, and recognition should go to our development team for the excellent work that they've done in developing a leading-edge product, which has resulted in this 3-year supply contract. We're all very excited about the prospects for the OEM and for the wider EV sector opportunity. And I will go on to describe our wider pipeline of opportunities, which continues to grow in spite of COVID. One reasonably significant impact during the period was we took possession, and the image on the bottom right here, of a state-of-the-art roll-to-roll direct imaging system. This was manufactured in France. We took possession just as lockdown started, and as a result of COVID, neither the French supplier nor their UK agent could come to Tewkesbury to complete the installation and commissioning. So the task therefore fell on our development team, supported remotely by the French engineers. So this rather time-consuming and protracted task had some impact, but I'm pleased to advise was successfully completed post-period. With regard to COVID, obviously the period in question has been a stressful one for us all. We're a manufacturing business, and therefore we're unable to work from home. The well-being of our staff has remained our top priority throughout. We've maintained our strict adherence to government guidelines, and focus from working at home where possible, implementing social distancing and additional hygiene methods in both facilities. Our teams have responded well to this challenge, and we would like to thank them for their efforts. The economy-wide impacts have clearly been discussed ad nauseum elsewhere, and while both TRACKWISE manufacturing sites have remained fully open and operating normally during the period has been characterised by a delay, and the delay in installation and commissioning of a key piece of capital equipment at TRACKWISE, I feel, is characteristic of the period across industry and across our customer base. Very little has stopped or has been cancelled, but just nearly everything has taken and is taking longer than anticipated. It seems to be that the pandemic will drag on through the winter, and will continue to prioritise staff safety, but also to continue to use cash wisely. So, Mark, can you talk about the financial highlights?
Yeah. So in the first half of 2020, our revenues were up in the headline terms from last year, but bear in mind that included revenues from Stevenage Circuits Limited for 3 months. So overall, at the TRACKWISE revenue was slightly below where it was last year, and IHT was particularly below where we expected it to be, and also its performance for 2019. That's almost entirely down to the problems that Philip has just been talking about, the delayed commissioning of the machine, and one of our customers on lockdown not able to take the orders that we could have produced, and that's impacted upon revenues, and it impacted upon margins as well. Incorporating Stevenage Circuits into our business, they have a lower margin for their products than we do for IHT, so that the mix of margin has swung towards Stevenage Circuits margin. But not having said that, it's still worse than we would have hoped, and that reflects that we take a different approach to margins than some people. There's a lot of fixed cost in our gross margin because we have a lot of machinery that we're trying to recover through trading. So we would expect the margin to improve next year, but it won't come back to the sort of levels we've seen before until the IHT revenues exceed the revenues from the other division, and the contract we won last Friday will help us to achieve that in relatively short order. So we had an operating loss for the year of half year of £365,000, but you'll see in a moment that we made a profit on the acquisition of Stevenage Circuits of £1.5 million, which allows us to have a profit for the year, for the half year after tax, and an EPS of 4.98 pence per share. We had net cash at the end of June of 1.6 million, which at the end of December was £300,000 worth of net debt. And here you can see I talk about the acquisition of SCL and the profit of 1.54 million. We bought a business with £3.2 million worth of assets for a net 1.8 million. Initially, that price was going to be 2 million plus 200,000 deferred, plus £267,000 on meeting of certain conditions. Post-acquisition, we did a warranty review straight away and identified some areas which we thought were not as agreed pre-deal. We had a negotiation with the vendor, and he has accepted all our points, and as a consequence, the price has been renegotiated to 1.8 million. That has been settled. We've signed a legal deed of variation, and there was no further exposure to TRACKWISE from that acquisition, and I think we've built a very good business at a very good price. Stevenage Circuits has been cash positive on a trading basis since acquisition, and our focus is to keep it on a cash positive basis for the rest of the year before we make any significant changes to the way it works. And the next slide, please. So the balance sheet has been improved significantly since we last spoke to everyone. Of course, we had the equity raise in March, where we raised £5.2 million net of expenses. We've had the benefit of the acquisition of Stevenage Circuits of £1.5 million. As part of the consolidation of Stevenage Circuits into the group, we had to do a fair value assessment of its balance sheet. We had an independent valuation done of the plant and machinery, and that has allowed us to make a small increase in the value of plant and machinery, and that, of course, contributed to the profits that we were able to disclose. You will see from this that on the intangible assets line, we've invested a considerable amount of cash in the half year on know-how and capabilities for IHT. This is almost exclusively directed at the EV OEM contract, which we have won, and those costs that have been capitalised will be amortised against the revenues of that contract over the coming years. Finally, at the end of June, we had cash balances of 3.2 million. And then moving on to cash flow, really a bit of a restatement of the things I've said already. SCL is cash generative. We've spent a lot on IH2, which I've just said. I think I'd like to bring to everyone's attention our ability to claim R&D tax credits. Across the group, we are consistently claiming between £400,000 and £500,000 a year. And I can't see any reason why that won't continue for the foreseeable future unless the tax law changes. But I think with the economy in the current state it's in, the government is unlikely to reduce this relief. So I expect to be earning that for some time to come. We do have unused bank facilities of £500,000. It's not my intention to use that, and I've got no intention to use it if I can avoid it, but it's there as a reserve if we need it. And finally, just to repeat that the equity raised 5.2 million. There's a cash bridge. You can see the effect of the big changes there. The big orange line is the equity raise, and then the two larger grey lines are the impacts of the acquisition of Stevenage Circuits. The rest of the items there are just movements in working capital items and capital expenditure and things like that. So that takes us from a net debt at the start of the period of £300,000 to net cash of 1.6 million at 30th of June.
Yeah, so if we talk a little bit more about the advanced PCB business, so this is what we're calling the non-IHT. As we transfer our production from Tewkesbury to Stevenage, Tewkesbury is becoming focused on the manufacture of IHT. Stevenage Circuits will now incorporate RF production and therefore manufacture all of our non-IHT products, a full range of advanced PCBs. Stevenage Circuits applies advanced PCBs to a wide range of customers and industries, 80 main customers, but with a long tail of several hundred more. 80% of revenue is to UK customers. We've highlighted here Iron Science Limited. This is Stevenage's largest customer in the first half of 2020, a UK engineering OEM, an established private business with over 25 years experience of designing, manufacturing and supplying gas sensors and gas detection equipment for a wide range of industries and applications. We also highlight here Qualcomm, a large US corporation with plants in the UK, serviced by Stevenage Circuits, and also Leonardo, supplied by Stevenage through an intermediate PCB assembly house. Leonardo, as you probably know, is a large defence contractor using high-density PCBs and high-technology materials. So we think together these justify the label advanced PCBs. In spite of COVID, Stevenage Circuits has a strong order book and some excellent opportunities into 2021 and beyond. So if we go on now to describe the three main market sectors of TRACKWISE and IHT, the first one being electric vehicles. In the period in February of this year, we announced our first production order for IHT parts for electric vehicle battery packs. And I've already said, I hope you'll have seen the post-period announcement of our signed 3-year supply agreement. Whilst it's possibly disappointing that the OEM hasn't allowed us to make public our association, I'm very excited for the prospects for the OEM and for the wider UK electric vehicle supply chain opportunity. I'm sure you will have all read about plans to build one or more gigafactories in the UK. The output of this or these gigafactories, which are individual cells, will need to be made in the UK into battery modules, in turn into battery packs, and in turn assembled into UK electric vehicles. And this is the wider supply chain opportunity. And TRACKWISE is currently talking to other electric battery developers, both in automotive and industrial, and more recently in aerospace. So the 3-year contract with face value of 38 million is a transformational one and a great endorsement of the company and its technology. Not far behind it, both in either in terms of time or in terms of volume, is the opportunity in medical catheters. So these are quite different products, but all manufactured on and using the same set of manufacturing assets as we're using to make the electric vehicle parts. We've already described the COVID-induced delay in installing and commissioning the roll-to-roll direct imaging equipment. The specified capabilities of this machine were at least in part driven by the sort of the high density interconnect requirements of medical catheters. The delay in commissioning this imaging equipment therefore delayed the delivery of parts to our lead medical customer, which is a very large US medical OEM. I'm happy to advise that these parts have been delivered, have been built into catheters, and have been reported to work correctly. And a second part is now under discussion. Components for these parts are required in very large quantities, and we expect an increase in volumes in 2021, leading up to full production thereafter. And as it say here, we're currently working with 5 medical appliance manufacturers in the field of catheters. So this is a very interesting and very exciting sector for us. Lastly, but certainly by no means least, aerospace. So the COVID impacts on the airline and aviation industries have been widely reported. When the CEO of Airbus says that the business is potentially at risk if the company doesn't take the right measures to bridge over the economic shutdown, one has to listen. However, just this week, Airbus have also announced their push for the world's first zero-emission commercial aircraft, and this image on the right was one of the 3 options that they presented this week. And this push by Airbus is part of an industry-wide ambition for emission-reducing aircraft, as NGOs like the OECD are urging industries and countries to begin the transformation to a green economy in order to power the recovery from the pandemic. And the main impacts on the sector have been on current production. So for current programs, TRACKWISE and IHT in aerospace is firmly aligned with reduced emission aviation. One of the chief benefits of IHT, one of the chief improvements of improved harness technology, is reduced weight and reduced space. Both of these equal fuel, which equals carbon. So we're firmly aligned to the carbon reduction attributes. Our work with GKN, which is progressing well, is all about all electric aviation. Melrose are conserving cash, but GKN Aerospace remain committed to industrializing the wing de-icing and air inlet scoop products of which we're cooperating. And this is an important program for our aerospace ambitions. Aside from GKN, we indicate here that TRACKWISE is working with a wide range of leading aerospace innovators on next generation products, UAM, flying taxis, business jets, both current and future models, high altitude pseudo satellites. For all of these OEMs or tier 1 or tier 2 suppliers, IHT benefits of reduced weight and reduced space, amongst others, are key attributes for them in delivering their objectives for emission reducing aircraft. You will see here that I think, well, hopefully those of you who've listened to us before will recall that we have filed our patent in all of the main airframer manufacturing locations, that the patent in Canada was granted in the period, and now it only remains Brazil where the patent application is underway. So really in summary, it's clearly been a difficult time to be in business. It's a difficult time for us all, but we believe we've made good strategic progress. We made an excellent acquisition in the period. We've made very good progress, as evidenced by our contract with our lead EV customer after the period. We're confident for the potential of IHT in our three principal markets. We've got sufficient cash and a stable customer base. So and I think I've hopefully described the growing pipeline of IHT revenue opportunities. So, yeah. So this is a list of our main our principal shareholders. I remain the largest shareholder, and then followed by Octopus and some well-known names in the investment community. And the last slide is a restatement of our business strategies. So I think that concludes it, and I think Paul, if you want to take over with the question.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, do please continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab on the right corner of your screen. As I say, just type your question and press send. But just while the company take a few moments to have a look at those questions that have come in today, I would like to remind you the recording of the presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard on the Investor in Your Company platform. Lastly, before I hand back to Philip and Mark, I'd like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company. Immediately after this presentation has ended, you will be redirected for the opportunity to provide that feedback so the company can better understand your views and expectations. Mark, Philip, perhaps before we look at some of the questions that have come in today, we have had some pre-submitted questions. Perhaps I can just read these out, and if you could give your responses. I think the first one you've pretty much covered off, but let me just read it out anyway. I understand the valuation of SCO is provisional. Any concerns that the asset might be overvalued?
To which I think I was pretty clear. It's not provisional. The price is agreed. It's finished, and I'm as confident as possibly be. There'll be no further implications on us, either profit-wise or cash-wise. We've covered it off.
Perfect. That concludes that one. That's great. Thank you, Mark. Second one we've got here: does the medical device uptick that you're expecting have the potential to be as meaningful as the recent EV order? Obviously, that was quite a sizable order. So, good question there.
Yeah, that's a fairly tall benchmark to exceed. There are a lot of medical catheters made in the world, and we see that as a very big market. We're at early stages with it, and even a single product for a single customer has the potential to be meaningful from a TRACKWISE perspective. But I think to say that it is as significant as the deal we just announced is possibly stretching even my enthusiasm a bit too far. So.
Thank you, Philip. And the final pre-submitted one we had through: when do you expect to receive any orders from your partnership with GKN?
So we are, as we have said, we are currently working with GKN on development, and as part of that development, we have some orders. We've had an order from them this week, but I think probably the question is when that is expected to turn into series production. I think that remains a slightly moot point based on the COVID impact on aviation, but our expectation is probably the 2022-2023 timescale.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
So, sorry, between now and then, the development revenue will continue, but I assume that that's what the purpose of the question is, the meaning of the question is.
I think you're spot on there. Thank you, Philip. Guys, I know I haven't perhaps given you a great amount of time, but if you could possibly just have a little scan through the questions that have come in, if you wouldn't mind to read the question out and give your answers where appropriate, that'd be much appreciated.
So the first one from Nick J. Who did you compete with to win the EV deal, and what set you apart? I think that's a good question. So our main and there's another question about competitors. So maybe if I deal with that one as well, would you talk a bit about your competitors, who they are, how your products compare to theirs? The two questions are aligned, really. So really what we find is that the main competitor for IHT is the incumbent technology. So an aeroplane and an automotive, a car, have been wired in fundamentally exactly the same manner for 100 years, and everybody understands why. They've got a supply chain of wire suppliers and wire harness suppliers, and so really the easiest decision when faced with the challenges of introducing an innovation is to say no change and stick with the supply chain. So I think the incumbent technology, the incumbent supply chain is probably our most active and powerful competitor. Now, with regard to PCB, printed circuit board competitors, there are, a competitive landscape is a grey scale of capabilities. So it's not a single point in the curve. So there are a handful of companies on a worldwide basis who are making what we would call very large PCBs, up to a meter or a couple of meters, literally just a handful. And there are even less than that who are making longer circuits. But our ability, the TRACKWISE ability, and this is the ability that is patented, to make length unlimited multi-layer printed circuits is what is patented and we believe is unique. So we have made a 50-meter long circuit, and we are about to make a 76-meter long multi-layer circuit for a nuclear fusion application. And we believe, well, I'm almost certain that no one else in the world can manufacture this capability. we've talked to the Guinness Book of Records about coming to witness and create a new category, and we bought on the price. But so, with regard to Nick's question about who did you compete with to win the EV deal, I think the long and the short of it is that we competed with Wire, and I think what set us apart was our was the technology, the benefits, the improvements. So the reason we're calling it improved harness technology is because the improvements that it offers. So with the EV, the use of flexible printed circuits instead of wires has some space. Weight is probably a second one, and the biggest one is manufacturability. So we, as I said, we have worked very hard with the customer. Mark alluded to the development expenditure that's gone into our balance sheet. So I hope that's answered the question. So there is no exclusivity in the contract. There's no exclusivity in the contract, but I think the work that we have done and the results that we've delivered as a result of that work is what has put us into that deal. Mark, do you want to talk about the third question?
So there's a question from Jake D. What plans do you have in place for a second wave of COVID? So our plans for the second wave will be rather like the plans for the first event. We cannot manufacture at home, so we kept all our productive capacity employees at work. We instituted new regimes for hygiene, which we're still doing all day, every day. We have encouraged social distancing, which is relatively easy for us because we've got quite a big plant and relatively few people, so they can easily stand 2 meters apart. We will continue to do that. In the past, we have taken some advantage of the furlough system for people who were particularly at risk or were shielding. And most of our office workers, support staff, our designers, what have you, they all work from home, and I think it's likely that we'll be reinstituting that situation in the very near future.
And the last question, I think, on the list, from James M. Are the company in communication with any spaceflight companies at the moment? Spaceflight. So yeah, I'm not sure you necessarily mean by spaceflight, but I'll tell you what we're doing in the space arena. So we are working with several European OEMs, spacecraft OEMs, both on spacecraft level harnesses and also subsystem level harnesses. So for solar arrays, for mechanism harnesses, and we're actively in the middle of a qualification program for a spacecraft mechanism harness. So yeah, it's at relatively early days, but clearly the weight saving is of even greater significance in spaceflight as it is for aerospace. My own background, I worked in satellite design for 10 years, so it's a subject of interest to me. But going back to the medical question, I think it'll be some time before spacecraft demand, comes anywhere close to the demand that we see from other areas. So we need to take a strategic view of the reward to effort ratio for all of these different opportunities. So I hope that answered those questions.
Any more?
Nope, I think that looks like you've covered most of those questions. Thank you very much indeed. Perhaps I could just ask you to wrap up, and then obviously we will redivert investors to provide feedback.
There's one just coming from Julian.
Julian H.
How onerous is the bidding process, and what is your expected success rate on bids? I think it doesn't really work like that, Julian, if I'm quite honest, because what we're typically offering is that we're not offering something that's on a bill of materials. So I mean, we've discussed about the competitors. We are typically going to a customer and with a solution. So therefore, what we've got to do is convince the customer that our solution provides a benefit over what's typically the incumbent technology, rather than going head to head with a number of suppliers. But so it might not be an onerous bidding process, but I promise you it's a fairly onerous development process. So, but hopefully the results have shown the benefits of that tenacity and the development process. Yeah. So in summary, I mean, we'd all rather wish that COVID wasn't here, and wish we could all meet face to face rather than over blinking Zoom calls. But I think the first half of 2020 has been another landmark for TRACKWISE. We had a fundraise just as the stock market was going in free fall. We bought a very good company at a keen price, had our first production order, and after the period end, secured a multi-year agreement. So I think we're faced going into an uncertain period, and obviously our plans can always be affected, or I won't say derailed, but they can always be affected by the ongoing COVID. But I think we're in good shape with some cash in the bank and some excellent prospects to go with. So for those of you who are investors, we thank you very much for your support, and for those of you who aren't investors, why not? What are you waiting for?
And on that note, thank you, Philip, and thank you, Mark. Thanks for updating investors today. I ask investors not to close the session, as you'll be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback when the webinar ends. If you just wait a couple of seconds. If you've accessed the meeting from our website, the feedback page will appear in front of you. If you've accessed it via the link, it will just ask you to log in and submit your feedback. Just take a couple of seconds, and it'll be greatly appreciated by the company. On behalf of TRACKWISE Designs PLC and Investor Meet Company, thank you very much for attending today's presentation. That concludes today's event.